Continuing, in addition to failing to seek out corroborating witness testimony, BPD persistently fails to seek out other types of evidence that could corroborate a victim's account of the assault. In the case just described, for example, in addition to neglecting to identify and interview witnesses, BPD made no attempt to review surveillance camera recordings from the 2 bars visited by the victim and the suspect, no effort to have the victim tested for drugs, and no attempt to gather physical evidence from the scene. BPD persistently neglects to request lab testing of rape kits and other forensic evidence. Rape kits are only tested if a detective makes a request, and all too often detectives do not request that rape kits be tested. Between 2010 and 2014, for example, rape kits were tested only 15% of BPD's cases involving sexual assault of adult victims. Similarly, between January and September 2015, BPD detectives requested testing of rape kits in only 16% of BPD's cases involving sexual assault of adult victims. In a few cases where BPD is requesting rape kit tests, we found that there are long delays in making those requests. In one case, for example, BPD requested a lab test 9 months after receiving a report of the sexual assault. It took another 5 months for BPD to get the results of the lab test. BPD fails to identify and follow up on indications of serial suspects in its sexual assault cases. Serial suspects are believed to be responsible for a substantial proportion of sexual assaults. One oft-cited study concluded, for example, that 2 in every 3 rapists who had never been prosecuted for their crimes were repeat rapists, and thus there may be enormous public safety consequences when law enforcement fails to identify and hold accountable serial rapists. We were troubled to find evidence of such failures in BPD's investigations of sexual assault. For example, we reviewed numerous cases of forcible rapes of women by strangers that presented circumstances suggesting there might be serial rapists involved. However, BPD detectives did not take the steps necessary to make that determination, such as searching for cases presenting similar factual scenarios or identifying other victims in Baltimore or neighboring jurisdictions. Missing or inadequate documentation of investigation. That speaks for itself. BPD sexual assault case files are as a general matter, they are missing critical information and lack sufficient documentation of the investigation to allow detectives, their supervisors, and prosecutors to effectively evaluate the quality of investigation and to assess and respond to the reported crimes. For instance, we found that BPD sexual assault files frequently lack video recordings of victims, witnesses, and suspects, even where the notes in the case file indicate that those interviews had taken place and been recorded. BPD sexual assault case files generally lack notes from officers and detectives. Where case files do include such notes, the notes provide insufficient information about officers and detectives' impressions and observations, or about their reasons for making investigative decisions to present a comprehensive factual picture of the reported assault. Indeed, across the board, we found that we learned far more about victims' impressions and recollections of their assaults from the forensic medical exam reports than from BPD's own reports. Failure to collect and review data about and to appropriately report and classify reports of sexual assault. The information provided to us by BPD in response to our request for data regarding the department's case of sexual assault suggests to us that BPD continues to have problems with improper identifying, reporting, and classifying reports of sexual assault, as well as with collecting, reviewing, and analyzing data about sexual assaults reported to BPD. BPD has previously been subject to public scrutiny for its misclassification of cases of sexual assault and for its failures to appropriately identify or report cases of sexual assault. In June 2010, the Baltimore Sun reported that BPD patrol and detectives had classified more than 30% of their rape cases as unfounded, a classification that is appropriate only for a report of rape that is found after investigation to be either false or baseless. BPD's unfounded rate of rape cases at that time was 5 times the national average. A subsequent review of unfounded cases conducted by the Baltimore City Sexual Assault Response Team Audit Unit found that of the cases reviewed by the SART Audit Unit, more than half of the sexual assault cases classified as unfounded by BPD detectives had been misclassified. According to the data from BPD, the proportion of rape cases classified as unfounded by BPD has dropped dramatically since 2010. BPD's data reflected a rate of 9.6% of rape cases classified as unfounded between 2010 and 2016. We are concerned, however, that the statistics mask a continuing problem of BPD's understanding and application of the appropriate definitions and use of the classification categories, as well as with its practices for identifying and reporting sexual assaults. In 2015, for example, BPD described approximately 56% of its rape cases as open. Meanwhile, only 17% of BPD's rape cases in 2015 were closed by arrest, a rate less than half of the national average for the proportion of rape cases closed by arrest. Also in 2015, according to both data and anecdotal evidence from the Baltimore City SART, only a handful of BPD's cases were closed as unfounded. SART data indicated a rate of 6.6% of rape cases classified as unfounded by BPD between January and September 2015, and BPD presented only a handful of cases classified as unfounded to the SART Audit Committee for their review. Taken in the aggregate, this data suggests that BPD is keeping the majority of its rape cases in an open status, thus dramatically reducing the rate of its rape cases closed as unfounded and creating the illusion of having made meaningful reforms to its procedures for identifying and classifying sexual assaults. Lack of supervisory review. Well, that goes without saying. Although a supervisory review form is included as a matter of course in BPD's sexual assault case files, these supervisory review forms are almost always left blank, and I will leave that right there. Okay, I'm going to stop here at page 129. I guess I'll finish this up tomorrow.